The oral history program is on the air once again. This is Ray Mofield, and we're visiting today in the home of Mrs. Marshall Rickman at Sharp, Kentucky. We're pleased to produce this program for the State Archives in Frankfort, for the Murray State University Pogue Oral History Library, and for the Marshall County Library, all of it paid for, of course, by WCBL, J. Shelby McCallum in Benton. We've had a lot of fun here today looking through the many mementos, photographs, ledger books, histories, pictures, and many other things that Mrs. Rickman has saved. You're sort of a string saver, Ms. Rickman.
I am a pack rat. I save everything.
We'll start off as we do with everybody, and we don't want to embarrass you, but do you mind telling us how old you are?
Not a bit. I was born April the 9th, 1910, and I'm 73.
A beautiful age, and you live in, where were you born?
Right here in this house.
In this house?
Never lived anywhere else in my life.
And it's
never expect to.
Such a beautiful, cool place.
It's comfortable.
Yeah,
that's all you can say about it. And since we've both been sick, we've just let things go to pot.
Yeah.
So.
And you've been around a while, and you have, I can tell, been very appreciative of Marshall County history and your own heritage. Tell us something about your grandparents, or your parents first, and then your grandparents.
Well, my daddy was Alfred Boyd Johnston, and he married Mattie Weed in 1899. And my grandmother was a Tillman.
A Tillman and a Johnston. Now, as a Civil War buff, that rings some bells for me. Were you, by any chance, related to the great Albert Sidney Johnston?
Very, very distant. I have been told a long time ago that there was a relationship, but it's so distant that, and they, of course, the older ones, my family knew him, knew Albert Sidney Johnston, and I've read about him. But I don't know, but it's distant.
He was a Kentuckian, and there are some historians who have argued he was the greatest general of the war, and that he won the battle at Shiloh, but unfortunately he died, and the following day Grant regrouped his forces and was victorious. And of course, General Tillman has lent his name to a number of things, including the high school in Paducah.
Well, General Lloyd Tillman was a distant relative of my mother, way back, distant. And his headquarters was in Paducah for a while, and his wife was named Augusta Tillman, and that's what the name of the school.
Yes.
And
now, I interrupted you there, and you were telling us about your parents and your grandparents.
Well, like I said, my mother's name was Samuela, and Samuela Tillman, and she married Hardin Marcus Wade. Well, she died when my mother was 2 years old. So her aunt, we all called her Aunt Nat, but it's Martha Thomas Tillman was her name. She raised my mother. And now the funny thing about my mother's name, my grandmother Tillman's name, was Samuela, but they called her Picayune. And I thought that was strange.
Yeah.
And then...
Picayune was a French coin, and there have been a lot of newspapers named that.
I never knew why it was.
Oh, yes, it was worth 6 1/4 cents.
I never knew why they called it that. But Alfred Boyd Johnson, and he had a grocery. His dad, James Hampton Johnson, had the flour mill over here. It was a 3-story building. And then he had a tobacco pricing barn over here on the corner.
All of that right here in Sharp?
Right here. Then we had a tavern when it was wet, right over here on the corner. Maynard Jett ran it, and a little lunchroom, and sold beer and stuff. And then they had a great big blacksmith shop, and at one time we had 5 doctors. Dr. Griffith, two Dr. Robinsons, Dr. Frank, Dr. Stinson, Dr. Edelman, and Dr.
Well, commercially, it was about as good a town as Benton then, wasn't it?
We had 2 garages, we had 3 groceries, and we had the Marley Roundtree's flour mill down the road here.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather's mill burned in 1903. See, I was born in 1910, and it burned in 1913 because I was 3 years old. See, I get confused. And it's set right over here where Ted Story's grocery is.
I remember the Story's grocery.
Well, right in front of it, at that time, there was a house that Leela Story and her family lived in, and they had a switchboard. Later on, the switchboard was up here in front of the Church of Christ, in that building across the road.
Was there a telephone man here named Tommy Johnston?
Yeah, and I was looking for his picture. I've got a picture of Tom and Pearl, his wife, and this great big touring car. First car I ever saw with leather seats and everything, and the top down, you know. And he took us for a ride in that.
Oh, that was a thrill.
Oh, that was a thrill. You could smell that leather. And I've got their picture, but I didn't find it a while ago. And she's got on this big hat, you know, and Tom's sitting up there. Now, Tom Johnson and Mattie Roundtree and Dora Titsworth were, we had the same grandfather, but different grandmothers. Their grandmother was Drusilla, and mine was Adeline.
So it just seems to me, the way you're describing it, Sharp was one of the leading centers in the whole county.
Busy, I tell you. Everybody hung around the stores, you know, and the shop over there. That was a gathering place. But most people came here and sat on the front porch to watch what's going on towards the shop.
I can remember my dad saying that they would take tobacco to Paducah.
Oh, yeah.
And when they got to Sharp, they had reached heaven, because from there to Paducah, the road was gravel.
Well,
and it was mud the other way.
They used to walk their cattle from all over to Paducah. And we had a big pond. We owned all that over there at that time. We had a big pond. And they would stop here and water the cattle and let them stay and rest a while, you know, and stop here. And, well, even Marshall did that. He's walked Fred Titsworth's cattle to town a lot of times. You know, they didn't have trucks or things.
I noticed you showed me a picture a while ago about one of the Wades, Hardin Wade, who was a county clerk, or...
He was a sheriff, and
he held a number of offices in Marshall County about the turn of the century.
I get this straight because I get the figures. He was sheriff, and then he was county attorney in Rockville, Texas, and then he was sheriff in Marshall County from, I can't see.
Well, I know one thing. This certainly illustrates that you've had some illustrious forebears.
Well, I thought they were great. I don't remember them, but I mean, I just love to read about them. He was sheriff of Marshall County from 1860.
8 to 1870.
Then he was county attorney, and then he enlisted in the Confederate Army at Wycliffe. And he was in the Army, and he got this history. According to the history, he got shot in...
I noticed one of your ancestors there, you have a medal showing that he served in Nathan Bedford Forrest's brigade, and that was...
Hardin Marcus Wade. That was him. That was my mother's daddy.
Do you know anything about where these people came from originally? Was Virginia, maybe?
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
And Virginia, and some from Lebanon, Tennessee. Can't say the word. Some of the Tillmans were from Tennessee, but most of these came from South Carolina. And you know, at one time, Bruce Philly, he was a distant relative too, but he was retracing the Tillman family, you know. And he said, and I've never heard it, and I don't know whether I don't suppose it's true, but I never heard it. Anyway, we're Scotch-Irish. And he found in his travels that we were descendants way back from Lady Fox of Scotland. I never heard. So
Well,
I don't know if that, I wouldn't even mention that but he had, before he died, and I don't know whatever happened to it, but he had compiled a whole...
From the Charles James Fox family, yes, most distinguished individuals.
Well, I don't know, you know, that's...
Now, we'll get back to some of this history, more of it in a bit, but I want to focus on
I
you.
was going to tell her about the rest of Sharp,
All right.
how big it used to be.
Okay, go ahead.
And how it was spread out. And not spread out, I mean it was all together. But think about having 5 doctors in one little place like this, 3 grocery stores, 2 garages, a telephone office, 2 flour mills at one time. And I think I named all the doctors, but it seemed like I left out one. Dr. Hall lived down, Dr. Griffiths lived down here in front of the old Whipple place. You ever know where that was? And Dr. Frank lived up here, just the other side of Paul McWater's. Dr. Robinson lived down here where Woodrow lives. And another Dr. Robinson lived over on the Schoolhouse Road. And then we had the blacksmith shop, was Cecil Grubbs and Henry Hill, and different ones ran it. And then the tavern, and then
Well, that's a far more extensive city than I had ever known about Sharp.
That's what I said. Most people don't know because they think it's always been like that.
And that's the reason I wanted to interview you.
Well, I told you I can't talk.
Well, let's say a little more about you. Since you were born here, you undoubtedly went to school in Sharp.
Oh, yes. I graduated in 29. I never went to school but Sharp.
You remember any of your teachers?
Addie Fun, Miranda Young, John Bonnet, Mr. McAllister, and Clint Smith. I don't remember having classes with Glenda, but I remember being a teacher. And Edith Peters, and
well, you've named certainly more than I could ever remember of mine, I'm
well,
sure.
That just comes off the top of my head.
But Addie Fawn was a great teacher, wasn't she?
Oh, yes, she was smart. Carnita Rudolph, I went to school to her, and both of our children went to school to her, in high school and grade school.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Mamie Campbell. Now, Mamie was the military-type teacher, Mamie Harper. She was Mamie Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time that I ever got called down, I sit next to my girlfriend, and she'd get me tickled, and I couldn't quit laughing. Mamie slipped up behind me and hit me over the head with one of those wooden rulers, you know, that you used to have, and I just jumped out of my seat. But kids would come home with a print of her hand on her face because, I mean, when she slapped, but I never did get slapped. And I was scared. But Miss Addie and Miranda and John and Ruth Henderson, and they were in high school. The grade schools, I went with Homer Holland. And
I remember Mr. Holland was coach of the 1938 state champion basketball team.
That was a great year. Everybody went to the ball games. And
that's the first time I ever remember being in Sharp.
Really?
In 38, I was a sophomore in high school at Hardin, and Mr. Holland, our principal, said, well, this is a historic occasion. We're going to close school today, and we're going to Sharp and spend the day. And there were no buses at Hardin then, so they got some man's cattle truck. And I guess either the entire school or everybody that wanted to go went in that truck.
In that truck. Well, we had An old truck somebody had, a flatbed, and when they'd have fair at Benton, we'd have to have uniforms. One year they were blue, and one they were pink, the midi blouse type, you know. And we all had to wear those. The girls wore that and sat on that flatbed truck. And we went the old road through Scale and that sand there. We'd have to get out and walk, you know.
That was the covered bridge on Clark's River.
And I'm so mad because they tore that down. But there was a sandbar in there, and if it rained, it was, you know, you couldn't get through it. But we go to the fair, and at that time they had it down there below, the best I remember, below Fieldbeck Can, back down there in the field, you know, somewhere. Then we'd have to march. And that was a treat to get to go to the fair.
All right, you got through the school. When did you marry?
May the 7th, 1936. Been married 47 years, last 7th of May.
47 years. Did you have any children?
Got two of the greatest, and two grandchildren. Tom is 43, James Thomas is his name.
And I remember him, of course, at Murray State. In fact, he was in our journalism program, and we're very proud of him, as I know you are. And 2 years ago, when he was selected as a distinguished alumnus, along with some others, including myself, I thought it was a great honor for Marshall County that two of the people picked were...
Well, he did too. He thought that was really something. Now, I think he was proud of that and being nominated for
the Academy Award.
Because that, you know, he just never... no big deal.
He's a modest young man.
He really is. He hasn't changed. And Frances, our daughter, she taught school she lived in Champaign, Illinois. Taught school for 14 years. And she said the way in politics and the boards and everything, she just got tired of it. So now she does.
Now you were saying about Frances?
She married Arthur Lair. From Champaign, Illinois, and he's taught all his life except when he was in the Coast Guard. And then she doesn't have any children, but now she does educational research for teachers. And she's wrote a book. She and another man wrote a book. And she called last night, and she just got back from Evansville. She has to do a lot of traveling too to lectures, and the teachers bring in material or something. And so she's happy with it. There's just 12 of them in this program, and she's been to Denver and to Boston, to Cincinnati, to different places for lectures. So she said last night she just got home from Evansville. She'd been to one up there, and she just loves it. But she doesn't have any children, but she has 3 West Highland Terrier dogs. And James Hawley is Tommy's son. He'll be 6 in September. And his daughter is Megan Colleen, and she'll be 8 in January. And
so you have the grandchildren.
The greatest. And they're going to be home sometime next month. And
I understand Tom is in the area working on a movie now.
Yeah, he has been everywhere. He left here the other morning, and they drove to Wycliffe and got a powerboat and drove to Mississippi. And they had been there before, and they saw a site they wanted to use, and it was water. Well, when they got over there yesterday, it was sandbar. No water there.
Well, Shelby McCallum was thrilled beyond description when Tom put WCBL as the call letters of the radio station in Coal Miner's Daughter.
He always tries to, bring in something. Now, Tom loves people, and he's got more patience, and he loves to hear them tell about things, that happen. And in everything that he's ever written, and he's been lucky so far with all of them, there's always something that happened around here that he has weaves in that movie. So that's the reason he wanted to make it. But when Phyllis Brown and Governor Brown had him, when when Coal Miner's Daughter premiered in Louisville, over at their house. There wasn't in the mansion.
Yes.
So she appointed him to the film commission to promote films in Kentucky, but she didn't need to do that because he's going to anyway. He just loves it around here. And he's got a beautiful home in California, and he likes California. But he's still...
There's always home.
Always home, and he knows where he can find everything that he ever left here because it's here. But they're just...
Right. What, when your family was young, and what was your husband doing then?
Well, when we
Did you
married,
farm?
he just got out of CCC camp, and he came here from California. He'd been California, Arizona, Colorado, all up in eastern Kentucky, in CC camps, and he always drove a truck, and got out of work. No.
Was he born in Marshall County?
Yeah, he was born down here behind the Methodist Church. I known him all my life, knew his family all his life. About a half mile behind the Methodist Church down here. It was gravel road. And it was then. And he got out of the CC camp one day, and we went up here to Brother Pace. Brother Monroe Pace lived up for about a half mile. And Stanley Miller and his girlfriend, and Ada Matheson, Howard Matheson, Ewan Miller, all went with us, and we went up to Brother Pace's and got married. And that was 7th of May, 1936. Would that make 47 years?
I guess I'm not that good at math.
Well, anyway, we were married 47 years, the 7th of May this year. And no, Marshall worked, after he got out of CC camp, why, I was working at the button factory at that time. And Paducah had a button factory on 3rd Street. So I got him a job at the button factory. I was making anywhere from $1.98 to $3 a week, but he made a little bit more than that. Because we had to cut buckets, cut buttons out of mussel shells.
Did I understand you right? No more than, say, $3 a week?
I have, and I can tell you a lot more that didn't make that much. And I was lucky if I made that much. But heavens, we could go down to a grocery there and buy more with $3 than you can with $100 now. But anyway, it was fun. We enjoyed it. Zippa Hancock, Ruth, all the girls around here worked there, and the boss was so good to us. He had a yellow convertible, and he let Zippa drive it so we could go, town while we were off or anything, get back anytime we wanted to. But these machines, you hold the shells under the water, and would saw the buttons, the pearl buttons, out of the mussel shell. Well, Marshall's job was to bring the mussel shells in. That kept them in the water in the back. Then
Muscling on the Tennessee was a pretty good little income for people in those days.
It really was, because they were unloading all the time. And there was button factory in Metropolis and one in Muscatine, Iowa at the time. I don't think there's any anywhere now. But then he...
well, everything's plastic.
He got, when they started building the dam, he got a job as a truck driver over there. And I think he was making $1 or $1.50 a day or something, and we thought that was a lot of money. And then he learned to operate machinery, bulldozers. Well, he took the test and he made an A1 operator, and then for the rest of his life, over 40 years he was mostly operated bulldozers, but he could operate any kind of machinery because he had an A1 card.
That paid well.
Yes, that was big money. And he worked long hours. But when he retired, he was working over here on the Smithland Dam, and all he had to do over there, his health was already getting bad then, was just to go in and push a button and start a machine and wait around until they got ready to stop it and push it and stop it. So he didn't have much work, but he just got disabled, and then he's had this heart surgery, and he never has got over that.
Well, we're getting along toward the end of the half hour, and you haven't started. Now, what do you want to do to kind of wrap it up, Miss?
Well, I think that's enough. I know that there's something more interesting that I could have told, but it was so sudden and I don't think too well.
Well, you said something about the thrill of your first car ride and so on. Do you remember the first train ride? Or?
Yes. When my sister was working in Paducah, and my brother took us in a buggy over, and we had a buggy shed right over there. We owned all that at that time. And we kept a buggy over there. And my brother took us to Alva, catch the train to go to Paducah, spend the weekend with my sister. And she lived now what's Lower Town now. She had an apartment in one of those big old buildings over there. And that's the first time I'd ever seen electric lights. And, you know, they always hung from a cord on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And this was right over her bed, and I stood on the bed and pulled that thing on and off on.
Almost wore out the
So
chain
I remember
pull.
that well.
Yeah.
And Gail Stinson told me that my daddy sold Dr. Stinson that lot up there to build on at that time. And Gail told me that Doctor said he had $5 to build a house with. Probably built a room or two for $5. I don't know. But
today that'll get a hamburger and a Coke.
Hardly do that. But I don't know. It's just so much that, you know, when you come right down to it, that people don't realize. Now imagine being a big tobacco prizing barn. We had a gas station, or gas pump. But Mama rented the grocery to Marshall Bailey when he lived down there, and it burned one night. After he closed up, it burned. Then our barn was out there where that one is now, but it burned too. Marshall owned it at the time, Marshall Bailey. Because we sold that, and we sold that lot from there back to Dr. Stinson's house for $35.
Oh.
And we sold 40 acres back here for $300.
Well, isn't that something? Prices have certainly changed.
Then we sold all this back here to the churches and parsonage back
Yes.
here.
Well, I thank you,
And I
Ms.
know there's
Richmond.
a lot more that I've left out in this, but
Ms. Rickman, we thank you very much. It's a pleasure to visit in your house. And what we really ought to do is to interview once a day for a month. So,
I don't know whether
and let you outline what we do each day. But it's such a pleasure to speak with you. And
you know, I was going to tell you about the games we used to play and all stuff like that, because that's what I understood it was all about. Not so much the family stuff, you know. But when I was
well, each program's a little different, so you've done well, and this concludes our broadcast for today.